stay tuned for that. But I want to thank the folks we have with us today. We have Lauren DeBella, who's our Deputy Secretary of Commerce at EFI. We also have your representative in the Florida House, Chuck Brannon. And then we have Suwannee County commissioners are here. So I want to thank the commission for being here. And how's the football season going? Are you guys doing any good in high school this year? Okay. Well, you know, they wanted to, 2 years ago, they were trying to close sports down. I said, no, that's not going to happen. We need to make sure we have, give kids the opportunity to do it. And so we did, but you know, we had to like fight the athletic association. So I remember I had the coach from Suwannee helped us out to kind of make sure that did that. And then we came to one of the first games that year out here, and people were really excited. And there were a lot of states that locked these kids out of opportunities, and it's been a total disaster what they did to these kids. And in Florida, you know, we put the students first. We made sure they were in school, had opportunities for sports and activities and all these other things. And that's one of the reasons why people love Florida. That's one of the reasons why the state's doing good. You know, if you look at what we're doing in terms of our economy, we had a $102 billion budget for last year that ended June 30th fiscal year. $22 billion surplus with that budget, the largest in the history of Florida. We were able to, you know, with that last year and then now this year we'll do it again. We've done $1,000 bonuses for all first responders, firefighters, and sworn law enforcement. Also did pay increases for the deputies in the rural counties. So Suwannee got money and a lot of our other counties in north central Florida, you know, to be able to increase the pay to make sure that we continue to have good folks wanting to serve. We also did a law enforcement recruitment package that is going to give $5,000 signing bonus to people that we recruit. And it's not just, it can be city, it can be county or state sworn law enforcement. You get a $5,000 bonus. So they're defunding law enforcement in other parts of the country. Here we're supporting law enforcement because it's important. And if you think about it, you look around the country and all the chaos that's happened in all these places because they're letting criminals out, they're not prosecuting people, they're turning their backs on law enforcement. And what happens is you know, we're going to talk about economic development today. Very important. You know, we talk about, you know, having schools open, education, very important. None of that amounts to much if you don't have public safety. If people don't feel safe, if you don't have a rule of law, then all this stuff starts to fray. And so that's what you're seeing in places like San Francisco, what you're seeing in D.C. and Chicago and New York City. They've turned their back on public safety, and it's hard to get that genie back in the bottle when you start letting that happen. And yes, they said they were going to defund law enforcement. Massive cuts across the country in 2020 and 2021. Crime predictably spiked as a result of that, which was a total disaster. But maybe even more significant was these prosecutors that get in and they say, we are not going to prosecute. So in San Francisco, they had this guy, he said, unless you steal over $1,000, we're not prosecuting. So they're stealing $950 out of the stores. The stores have to close. You know, how you do that? And what they would do, they would go, people would park their car and they would like leave it open and say, I have nothing here, because they know the car's going to get broken into. Because people break into cars, they won't prosecute them. I was talking to a guy in San Francisco, someone broke into his house and they wouldn't prosecute him. So that is unacceptable. And we actually in Florida said we're going to follow the law across the board, state, local. And we had a prosecutor over in Tampa that had said he's not going to enforce laws he doesn't like. So we removed him from his post, and we said that's not going to happen. And you see, too, I mean, you see a lot of these cities that are crumbling. You also have a southern border that's just totally being overrun. You know, Biden comes in and he reversed Donald Trump's policies, which have allowed millions and millions of people to come across illegally, and the amount of human trafficking and sex trafficking, and of course the drugs that are pouring in, methamphetamine and fentanyl, particularly the fentanyl. China makes it, but they need it to get it. They need the southern border open to get it all into our country. And so now you're seeing this ravage communities all across the United States. People say, I sent people to help at the border last summer. They say, Florida's not a border state. Why do you care? All this stuff affects every community. We see how it affects people in particularly in North Florida when you're talking about the meth and all these other things. And it's a big problem. And so they're not doing anything about it. In fact, they're knowingly allowing this to happen. So the number one cause of death in the United States for people 18 to 45 is overdose from fentanyl. That's new. That would not have been the case 10 years ago. So this is a major epidemic, but it's being facilitated by very reckless policies at the southern border. And, I think that first of all, they talk about like this is like good policy in theory. Then when red states start sending illegal aliens to New York City and D.C., they don't like that because they don't want to have to deal with the consequences. And it's not, yes, you have criminal aliens, all the drug stuff, but just the sheer number of people. You need social services, educate. You need your communities just get overwhelmed. They're getting overwhelmed at the border for sure. But as people get dumped in these different places around the country, of course that's going to happen. And I really hope that if the Republicans take control of the Congress, that they hold Biden accountable for what's going on at the border, because this is just wrong. And its policy has been very bad. Obviously, it's been devastating. But it's also just the fact that, he took an oath that he would take care that the laws of this country were faithfully executed. And when you ignore the law and open the border, you're violating that oath. And so it's wrong as a constitutional matter to do this. There's certain duties that are imposed upon office holders, and you've got to fulfill those. And so he's not doing that, and I think it's been a big, big problem. And a lot of what we're doing, we're having to fight back against a lot of the stuff that's coming out of D.C. If you look at our unemployment rate, we're a lower unemployment rate, 2.7%. The nation as a whole is 3.5%. And so we're much better than the nation as a whole. We have more people employed in Florida today than we did prior to COVID. There's a lot of places around the country, they've not recovered from their COVID lockdowns that they did, really draconian policies that were counterproductive. So we've consistently led the country on all major, done better than the national average on all major economic metrics. We have actually an expanding labor force. But there's jobs that are open, but there's not enough people in some places because I think it's because they fell out of the workforce because there was a lot of unemployment benefits and stuff for a long time. So it changed the incentives. In Florida, we said we have jobs available. So, unemployment's not a way of life. It's if you fall down, we want to help you get back up, but you got to work. That's what we want to do for our able-bodied. And so we've been able to do better. And in July, we gained over 70,000 private sector jobs. That's one of the top performing months in the last 30 years in the state of Florida. And so So we have that. People, obviously, we're a good economic environment. People have gravitated here because they knew they could be free over the last couple years.